Hello and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut and sew a keyhole neckline corset with a basque waistline. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So now I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to underbust, shoulder to waistline, and after my waistline I added 4 inches for my basque. Now I'm going to mark out my basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches on this part. So after doing that, I'm going to place my French curve and I'm going to draw out my neckline. So I'm just going to readjust what I have at the neckline a bit, and after that I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline it so that it's going to be more visible. After that, I'm going to place my tape at the shoulder and I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2, giving me 7 inches, and I'll add half inch, making it 7.5 because we're attaching sleeve to this dress. Come down by 1 inch and I'll place my ruler, connect to that point. So after that, I'm going to find my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, giving me 7 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and rule out a straight line from that point. So that is my chest line. So whatever I have on the shoulder, which is 7.5, I'll measure it here back and I'll place my ruler, connect and draw a straight line. So now I'll be dividing this into 2. I'll go ahead and fold my tape. So after doing that, I'm going to come in by half inch. Now I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 at this point. I'm going to take my French curve, place it touching my bust circumference, the half inch, and I'll go ahead to connect upwards this way. So this is what I have for my armhole curve, and I'm going to use my marker to outline it so that it's going to be visible and mark out the shoulder line. So the next step you're going to take is to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5. So I'm going to go ahead to mark it all out and I'm going to connect it with my ruler. So just like I said earlier, I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to rule a straight line connecting all those 3.5 inches that I have marked. Now at the shoulder, I'm going to divide this into 2 and I'm going to mark. Then go ahead to connect. This serves as a guide to draw out my dart at the upper part. So now I'm going to be marking 1 inch dart on both sides of my waistline, the basque length, and at the underbust. And I'm going to go ahead to use my ruler, connect, and I'm going to also go ahead to draw out a straight line. So after drawing out my straight line, I'm going to go ahead to use my marker also to outline it so that it's going to be very visible. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead to place my French curve, connect from my bust point down to my underbust, and I'll go ahead and also repeat this at the other side of my pattern. So if you don't have a French curve, that is just okay. You can go ahead to use a freehand sketch also to do this. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead to measure about 2 inches upwards. So I don't want my corset to reveal much, but you can go ahead and use 1.5 inches just like we have at the thumbnail, but I want mine to be a little high and not show much of my cleavage. So now I'm going to go ahead to connect from my bust down to that upper part and also repeat it at this other side. So this is what I have, and I'm going to go ahead to outline it this way and repeat this at the other parts also. So now I'm going to go in by half inch at the chest line. You can go ahead and come down by more if you want. So after this, I'm just going to place my French curve and I'm going to connect. So just like I said, you can go up from your chest line by 1.5. That is actually what we have on the chest, on the thumbnail, but for mine, I don't want it to reveal much cleavage. So there's a probability I'm going to be wearing this dress and I don't want my cleavage to show. So at this point, I'm going to place my French curve and connect it to the other point. So now you can mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2 and add 1 inch by the side to draw your cup, or you can decide to divide what you have at the armhole area into 2, then go ahead and place your French curve and connect. Now you can also use your freehand sketch if you don't have a French curve. So at this point also, I'm going to connect at this point. So you can place blending to make sure that your neckline is meeting. So my neckline is meeting and I will just draw out the curve on this part this way. So now we'll be creating the keyhole neckline on the yoke part of this dress. So I'll just come down by 1/2 inch and I'm going to go ahead to connect it to where my cup starts, which is at this point. So that by the time I join back, my corset is going to be at that point. So now this is the yoke part of it, and the next thing is to insert my measurement. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the 2 inches that it take, and mark my sewing allowance. So at the under bust, whatever I have at the chest line, I'll mark at the bust line. So at the under bust, I'll be marking my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it, and mark my sewing allowance. At the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and replace it, mark my sewing allowance. So I'm not snatching my waistline, I'm using zipper for this. I don't actually have anybody to lace it for me, so I'm just going to use a normal zipper at the back. So you can go ahead and snatch your waist if you want to also. So I'm just going to stop at the waistline because at the basque length we are going to also cut it out. So now to draw out the basque, what you're going to do is to blend your pattern this way. Just blend it this way as I'm doing that, and make sure your lines are meeting. So after doing that, you can just come in by your sewing allowance at the waistline, so that by the time you're joining your pattern at the front and also at the back is going to meet. So from there, I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect. So after drawing out, this is what I have. I'll label this as C and S and label this as A and B. The C means center, while the S means side, and this is my cup A and my cup B. So the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to cut out this pattern. And so if you have any question regarding this video, please don't forget to leave your question at the comment section. And at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you find it very interesting. So after I'm done cutting out my pattern, this is what I have, and we'll be moving down to the back pattern. So on the back pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out all the basic measurements just like we did in front. The only difference is that I have a zipper at the back. So now I'm going to start imputing my measurement. First, I'm going to mark my dart, which is my shoulder to bust plus 1 inch, making it 10 inches. And from that zipper line, I'm going to be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So all my measurement is going to start after the zipper allowance. So now I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect, mark 1/2 inch dart intake at both sides of my pattern, and after I'm done doing this, I'm just going to go ahead to take it up at this part. So now this is what I have, and I'm going to go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Since I don't have any dart on this part, I'll just go ahead to mark my sewing allowance at that point. So I'll go ahead at the underbust, I'll mark my underbust circumference divided by 4, measure this tiny dart, replace it, and mark my sewing allowance. at the waistline, I'm going to mark the waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake here, replace it, and I'm going to go ahead to mark my sewing allowance. So now I'm going to go ahead to connect from the chest line to the bust, down to the underbust, and down to the waistline. So this is what I have at the back. It is very simple and basic, and I'm just going to go ahead to connect it. So after I'm done doing this, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to get rid of the bulginess at the back of the dress. So there's this bulginess at the back of your dress, so I'm going to go ahead to do that. So I'm going to go ahead to mark 1/2 inch at this point, and I'm going to go ahead to extend it upwards this way. So after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to cut or trim it out from the basic bodies. So before continuing my pattern, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out the remaining parts of this dress before we go ahead to alter it. So, and also, if you don't want to use the normal back bodies that we do on this channel, like the parts that has the loop, you can just go ahead to use your basic back bodies for your dress. So now, to alter my pattern, first I'm going to go ahead to extend this line, my nipple to nipple line, upwards. And after that, at the yoke, at the neckline, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So I forgot to mention my neckline for the back is 3 by 2 inches, and I went ahead to connect it down to my nipple to nipple line, and I'm going to draw a straight line and take out like 0.25 inches at the yoke so that I won't have gaping at that part when I'm actually sewing my dress. So I'll just go ahead to cut this out. Now, I forgot to cut out this gaping at the back, but I'll still do that later. So you can go ahead to blend in your dart, especially if you don't want to start sewing that at the back of your corset. So you're just going to go ahead to blend it in this way. Now we're moving over to the skirt. So for my skirt, I folded it with my hip divided by 4 plus my sewing allowance. So you're going to place your tape at 17 inches because we stopped at the waistline. So go ahead and mark your skirt length, and you're going to be adding 2 inches for folding allowance. So remember, my skirt started from 17 inches. I placed my tape at 17 inches. So at the upper part, I'm going to be marking my waist circumference divided by 4, and I'll be adding my sewing allowance. So whenever I'm sewing a corset or bustier gown, I don't normally add that to my skirt, but if you do, please add that to yours. Now I'm going to place and mark 7 inches for my hip line. For a much taller person, you can use 8 inches. So now I'm just going to connect it to the end because I used my hip circumference to fold the fabric, which is my hip circumference divided by 4 plus the hip plus the sewing allowance, please. So now you're going to go ahead to get your waist to knee point. So remember, our upper pattern stopped at shoulder to waistline minus the basque, which is 17, and now my waist to knee point is 35 inches, and I'm going to go ahead to mark. So after marking that 35 inches, I'll place my tape and go up by 2 inches. So why am I doing this? Is to give the skirt a fitted effect after the hip. You know, that very slanty effect that you have on your skirt, to make it relax very well. So after that, whatever I have on my hip circumference, I'll minus 2 inches from it. Let's say my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 plus 2 inches, that's 12 inches. 12 minus 2 will give me 10, and I'll go ahead to mark it all out and then connect it back. So why am I doing this? Is just to make my skirt a pencil skirt at the lower part and make it fitted. So I'll just go ahead to cut out my skirt pattern. So after cutting it out, I'm going to go ahead to place another fabric on it. That is the back pattern. So I'll be adding my zipper allowance at the front part, and then I'll go ahead to trace out the back. So with this, we are done with today's tutorial, and please don't forget to join us for the sewing part of this video. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thanks. See you in our next video.